It was another quiet night at the office. No phone calls, no messages, nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know.
All right, folks. Good afternoon and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central. It is August 6th already, folks, and you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. That will get you into the studio for two-way talk and conversation today behind the glass back at HQ Fly on the board, and he'll do that for you. Don't forget, we also have our text line up and running, and that just simply means, hey, you text this number, 617-297-8388, like you would any other text, 617-297-8388. It appears on the screen here in the studio in real time. We try to work it into the conversation, and the station does stream 24/7 on the TuneIn app, just like thousands of other radio stations. So you can take us anywhere, and that's a great feature. You can tell Alexa to play WCRN, and she'll do it, no questions asked. I do, as well as a couple other shows here at AM 830 WCRN, stream our shows live on our video cameras, whether they're in this studio or they're, like I am doing now, from the Cameo studios. So the Cameo Cam is on, and you can do that on the station's Facebook page, YouTube channel, and you can do it on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, and that means X and Facebook and Twitch TV, as well as LinkedIn profile, and we do stream live to Rumble. All of the shows, by the way, are on Facebook, but Facebook started to delete them, I think, after 30 days. But you can go back and look at the show anytime on the Rumble page, as well as joemangishow.com, our blog and website there. Obviously, a lot to talk about today. Coming into, and prepping for the show, of course, the breaking story out of Fort Stewart, Georgia, where there was an active shooter. He's in custody. The shooter's in custody at this point. 5 soldiers, however, have been shot as of now, and I'm talking seconds ago before I turned the microphone on. Joey Jones was on Fox. No casualties. Nobody's passed. Nobody's been murdered as of a few seconds ago, and let's pray for that nobody does succumb to any injuries. About a couple hours ago, 11:04, it is the largest Army base, Fort Stewart, the largest Army base east of the Mississippi. And obviously, as soon as this news is coming over and I'm hearing what's going on, I flash back, of course, to November of 2009, and we had the Fort Hood shooting. 13 people killed, 30 others wounded. Major Nadel Hassan had access, and this is the thing, you remember these bases, and I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. I'm sure everybody at some point at least is driven by a Fort Devens or an Otis or some kind of base somewhere. And they're very big. I mean, they are towns, they're cities. Thousands of people are stationed there. Thousands of people live there. They have all the functioning of a independent city. Water support, sometimes power supply, living stores, all of that. And I don't know, as a kid, military bases were something onto their own, which you always thought they were very organized, very law-abiding, very safe. And so when something like this happens, the downside to this is most everybody on that base would be at least somewhat trained, if not highly trained, in weapons, in the use of weapons. And second, they may have access to a great number of weapons, and maybe powerful weapons. So when something like this happens, it is very serious. Not that a shooting, mass shooting, isn't serious by any stretch of the imagination. But I think there's a different level of concern when you hear that somebody has lost it on a military base, because A, Is it a civilian? Is it a military person? Is it a high-ranking official? Is it a high-ranking officer? And exactly what do they have access to? And if you remember, the Fort, and we were talking about this back in the day, man, because Barack Obama made sure this was classified as a workplace shooting. You remember that, folks? Fort Hood, a workplace shooting. And no, this was an act of terrorist at Fort Hood. Got a reserve comment on Fort Stewart here today. Again, hopefully let's have prayers and thoughts about the 5 soldiers and other people who have been injured in this shooting. The information will roll out. So we'll wait for tomorrow. I'll reserve some comment on this until we know more about this. But Fort Stewart's about 4 miles southwest of Savannah. It is home to the 3rd Infantry Division. It spans, and get this, about 280,000 acres. Again, it's a massive amount of land and a massive amount of infrastructure going on there. It supports extensive military training and operations. In this, again, there was also another tragedy, a separate one at Fort Stewart. And I don't know the details on that, but I'm sure our caller must know it. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll see what's going on with that. But I don't know. When it happens on a military base, folks, it's another level of cringe on that. All right, reminding you folks that we are available for your call in for the next hour up until 2 o'clock at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And please feel free to join us on the streaming. You can do it at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, on my Facebook X account, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, or Rumble. Just go to the station's Facebook page or YouTube channel. Let's go to the phones. Mark has been waiting patiently. Mark, hey, what say you? I assume you have an eye on this Fort Stewart thing.
Not really. I heard a flash of it, but I just kept on going because it was coming mainstream media. I'm done with them. I don't want to hear what they have to say. I'm done. So anyways, when I hear about this shooting, and I learned more from listening to you than I heard on Channel 25, whatever. And yeah. And it brought to mind to me, like when I was in the military, and I know we're talking 50 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you went onto a base, okay, of that size, all right. Now this is very pertinent. What I have to say.
Okay.
The guard duty. In charge at every entrance into that base. I don't care how many entrances there were. There'd be a guard shack there, and there'd be at least 2 guards there, and one of them, who was the JOD, they used to call it, junior officer of the deck, would have issued to him a .45 automatic with 2 live clips on his person. That's every one of those guards at every one of those entrance stations. That's a lot of firepower.
Yeah.
Never mind the SPs that are patrolling the. So I kind of scratched my head, man. I said at least unless the military procedures on these bases is radically changed. Or these people in the military, they're not training these people properly, and they don't know what they're doing.
Right. I think there's a lot of ways to go with this, Mark. To your point, first of all, isn't that one of the biggest things that Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump has been telling us, is that we have to stop with all of this fringe stuff and get the military back to the core principles of the military, tighten it up a little bit. Also, if you remember, Fort Hood, military personnel weren't allowed to carry on there. So if there was an active shooting,
kind of like what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So I mean that's like, and if I can make an analogy to civilian setups where you see these signs say at movie theaters or something, oh, no guns, you can't carry a gun, even if you're licensed to carry. I mean, first of all, that's your rule. It's not the law. Second of all, I think it's the most asinine thing in the world to have these no gun zones, because the only people who will pay attention. Sure.
There with this.
Please.
You're in the days that I'm talking about. Like if you ever went to where Navy ships were tied up, I mean ships for the line, warships.
Yep.
And they were docked at a pier. Even on a ship, when you walked up the gangplank and you came onto the fantail of the ship where the guard shack would be, that guy was the same thing as what I was talking about on the Army, Navy, or he was an armed guard with a 45 automatic and 2 loaded clips on his person around his. That was back 50-something years ago. I don't even know if that level of security exists anymore.
Absolutely, if that same level. Mark, thank you for the call. Always appreciate it, and always bring up a good point. And I have no idea. It's been a long time since I've gone on to a military base. I used to go on to Hanscom on a regular basis because of I needed to go to the PX or the main exchange. Maybe I needed uniform stuff, and there's a civilian part there too. I would go to the military part because of the Air Force Auxiliary there, but sometimes I'd go to the civilian and I'd fly out of there. But every time, of course, you got to go through that entrance in that base. And actually I was quasi arrested once. It was my fault because I was going on to the military, the Hanscom Air Force Base military side, and had not realized that just like a few weeks after my birthday, and my license had expired, and I was 19, 18, I don't know, I was a young guy. And the guy is like, hey, can you pull over there and talk to me? And the only reason I wasn't actually, I was told that I had one of the cadets with me from the youth part of this thing. And I said, if he can drive it off. And it's all because the guy that was at the guard gate was doing his Air Force reservist weekend. And he was from the old neighborhood and knew my family, my uncles and stuff. And he said, I talked to my lieutenant. We're not going to arrest you if he can just drive off the base. But it was very scary and very intimidating. All right, folks, horrible thing happening here at Fort Stewart in Georgia. I'm sure as the news unfolds, you'll hear about it. But we got to take our first break here on the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget, we're streaming live. You can join us and watch the stream as well from the Cameo Studios. Back in 2 minutes and 10 seconds, folks.
Polar Park is the place to play, so treat yourself to a private suite at the best ballpark in AAA. Suite rentals are the best way to enjoy a fully catered and climate-controlled experience at the park. Whether you choose to watch the game from inside of the suite or out in your seats, it's the ultimate experience for a special occasion. Visit WooSox.com or call 508-500-8888 to reserve your suite today.
This is Jerry Doherty, host of Making Money Last, right here on WCRN. Like all business owners, I'm interested in why people choose to work with Boston Independence Group. So I asked my clients. The most common response, Jerry does not try to be all things to all people. Boston Independence Group is specialized, focused solely on retirement planning. My customers enjoy the difference. We do one thing, and we do it exceptionally well. Help other people live better in retirement. That's it. If you're ready to retire or making plans to retire, we can do for you what we've done for hundreds of other retirees throughout New England. Live better in retirement. Just give me a call. I'll show you how. My toll-free number is 877-772-1776. Again, that number is 877-772-1776. And you can visit us on the web at bostonindependencegroup.com. bostonindependencegroup.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Eddie Arus with the Vascular Care Group. If knee pain is making everyday activities feel like a struggle, and you've been told your only option for relief is major surgery, think again. Genicular artery embolization is a non-surgical outpatient treatment that can dramatically reduce pain and improve mobility. It targets the inflammation that's causing your arthritis knee pain, and best of all, is performed right in our office. To learn more about living the pain-free life, visit thevascularcaregroup.com with offices in Worcester and Sturbridge, Massachusetts.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second segment of the Wednesday afternoon edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN at Radio Central. Reminding you, you can join the conversation for the remainder of this hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Don't forget our text line is up and running at 617-297-8388. And feel free to watch the streaming of the show live on Rumble, X, Facebook, both station and joemangishow.com, LinkedIn profile, and even Twitch TV. All right, moving along. We'll keep an eye on that, and I'm sure it'll be all over the news what's going on in Georgia there. But crime is starting to fall since Trump has taken office across the board. And we'll talk about specifically connected to immigration and the records that are being done there. But we have this in D.C., believe it or not, it was the Doge. Do you remember? I think it was Jesse. I watched the one with Jesse Waters and Elon Musk and the Doge team. And remember when the left went nuts because Elon Musk had these young men and women who were absolute killing it in their industries, respective industries, the brilliant young men and women. And one of these gentlemen had a screen name and big balls, and they went nuts over that. And Jesse Waters asked the kid in the thing. He goes, I don't know. He's making this thing in the middle of the night, and it just came out of nowhere. There's no secret message in it. Anyway, he ended up getting assaulted. And this is Elon Musk and President Trump are finding common ground again here on pushing to federalize Washington, D.C. after this brutal attack on the Doge team guy. Now, he was heroic in his movements. He saw a woman, a gang of thugs, of animals were harassing and attempting to carjack this woman, a gang assault. And he saw this and he intervened and they beat him badly. So early Sunday morning around 3 a.m., it was in D.C.'s Logan Circle. I don't know how familiar you are with D.C. About a dozen young men. They were trying to assault this woman in a car. And Big Balls, as he was known, Edward Corstein, a Department of Government Efficiency team member, he saw this. He stepped in and intervened. Now, we saw that the poor woman in Cincinnati who intervened, and she got cold cocked out, knocked right out on the street. Haiti suffered a lot of injuries, concussion, bleeding, bruising. Police have arrested two 15-year-olds from Maryland, charged with unarmed carjacking. They're being held in a youth detention center. They may be considered youth, but that's a real grown-up type of crime, folks. So now Musk, former head of Doge, of course, he's saying DC's crime is out of control. He's posting this, of course, on X, and he's urging federalization. Trump echoed that on Truth Social, threatening a federal takeover if leaders don't act. Now, I think we can all agree Trump doesn't bluff. Now, he may not always follow through if he gets what he wants. But if he says, if this doesn't happen, this is going to happen, it pretty much happens. Either he gets what he says needs to be done or he takes the step he said. He doesn't do the don't or draw a line in the sand and then nothing when it's crossed. But he is threatening federal takeover if they don't get their act together. And that means throw out some of these ridiculous policies and start enforcing the laws and prosecuting and having consequences for these crimes, especially these crimes of physical actions. I mean, when people are beaten and carjacked, this isn't slap on the wrist type of stuff, folks. And let's not forget that our buddy there, Janine Pirro, is the U.S. attorney, confirmed the other day. So the DOJ's Janine Pirro not acting, not interim, but U.S. attorney for D.C., who has met with Trump to plan this crackdown. It was already in motion before this happened. And this signaled a push for maybe federal oversight on the city's public safety because they're just not doing the job. And Trump, rightly so, in my opinion, is blaming lenient policies for letting young offenders off. And DC's governance has failed to protect residents, but we've seen this in a lot of cities, mostly blue cities. Yes. Go ahead, take issue with that. No problem. Give me a call, 508-871-7000. DC's crime wave has had a lot of recent tragedies, too. Follows a string of violent incidences, right? June 30th murder, 21-year-old congressional intern, Eric Tarpinian Jacquem. He was shot near the 7th and M Streets. Tragic attack where he was just a bystander. He wasn't even involved in the altercation. Whole life ahead of him. 21 years old, congressional intern. Thinking he's there, starting his career, promising life and career ahead of him. DC has seen other high-profile crimes, like an armed carjacking of a House staffer back in May. Fatal shooting of a 3-year-old on July 4th weekend. And with 91 homicides in 2025 so far, not for a year, so far in DC, 91 homicides. Would you feel safe? And I mean, DC is a massive area either. And the DC Police Union blames 2020 policing reforms for weakening the law enforcement. Although critics say crime has dropped over 15 years. 91 homicides in the first half of the year. Yeah, you still got a long way to go here. So on that note, federalizing DC would shift control from the local leaders, leveraging Congress's authority over the city, since it is limited home rule since 1973. And supporters say it's needed to curb crime. And opponents, of course, call it a power grab that could target political. DC, did that drop out? Are we still, let me check. Yeah, we're still good. I thought for a second I lost the microphone there for a second. The point is, on this here, there's been talk, right, over the years about making DC a state. And they're throwing in Puerto Rico and stuff like that. Now, the left likes that idea because it's DC. They love it because they would probably automatically pick up a couple Senate seats and a congressional seat, right? But here's the thing. It was specifically set up the way it was set up, not to be a state by the founding fathers. And when you think of these independent type entities out there, you know, Vatican is something like that. A country, a state within a state. DC is its own thing within the country. And they were set up for a reason. So there wasn't that going on. So I have no interest in DC becoming a state, none whatsoever. But that being said, the mayor of DC is supposed to be running that with the same gusto and missions that a governor would run their state, and that is the well-being and safety of the citizens. Now, this slain intern's mother, Tamara Jacquem, she slammed the DC Council, saying they treat crime like a joke, and she urged more police funding to stop the violence. Of course, this whole argument, it's kind of back in our frontal lobe, isn't it, about the police defunding, because you've got this jamoke in the Democratic candidate in New York, Mondami, who is unbelievably on the record And he's doing the backpedaling, right? He has said police have to be defunded. They are a racist organization. They're all horrible and they've got to be defunded and the money put elsewhere. Now he's trying to backpedal this, of course, right? But defunding police at the same time the horrific crimes are taking place, it just doesn't compute, Will Robinson. It doesn't come together, folks. So the question, does federal control fix DC's crime or does it risk undermining local governance and escalating tensions? Well, I don't care if it escalates tensions among politicians. What I want is an escalation among the criminal element because they know that they're probably going to be caught, prosecuted, and have serious consequences for their animalistic behavior. And not, he's misunderstood. He had a horrible childhood. Ignoring the victims, the real victims in this case. That's what I'm worried about. So you have Eric, the 21-year-old UMass Amherst senior interning for, was it Ron Estes? Shot northwest DC's. And that was in a crossfire. So he wasn't even involved in that. And now you've got Big Balls from Doge doing the right thing. And I don't know, some other networks, maybe they don't show the picture. I doubt that CNN does. I haven't seen it. I saw it on Fox briefly. And he looked like he took a beating. Right? He was bloodied up and concussion and everything. But from Hero's beating to a young intern's murder, DC's problem is front and center. In federalization, the answer or the better solution? 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Or hit us with social media, Joe Mangiacotti Show as well, if you want to do that. But federalization might help out here because they just refuse it. They're in that leftist crime type element. And again, anything that Trump has anything to do with, a knee-jerk reaction is to go against it and have no support for it whatsoever. But folks, we're coming up to that time for a mid-show break here on the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, you can join us on the streaming on Facebook, X, Twitter, or Rumble TV. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 10 seconds, folks.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist Sherry Spear, and here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. More of those milky, smoky skies for today with high temperatures climbing into the upper 70s or lower 80s. Overnight tonight, expect 50s and 60s as the weather pattern stays quiet, and tomorrow ends up a little bit brighter and a little bit warmer as that wildfire smoke continues to thin. I'm meteorologist Sherry Spear, and you can hear Boston 25 live from the Morning Drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
More live and local radio is next. Stay tuned to Radio Central, 830 WCRN.
Are you looking for a holistic approach to your health? One that supports your body's natural ability to regulate, adapt, regenerate, and heal? Look no further. The Bioregulatory Medicine Institute, BRMI, a nonprofit global organization dedicated to advancing the science and art of bioregulatory medicine, welcomes you to their free and rich library of resources. You'll find articles, podcasts, videos, and more at brmi.online. BRMI believes health freedom is a basic human right, honoring medical ethics and the innate intelligence of the human body. When your body is properly supported, it will thrive. If you're looking for the root cause of illness, physical, emotional, or spiritual, visit brmi.online. brmi.online.
This is WCRN, Worcester.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on Radio Central AM 830 WCRN from the center of the dial, the center of New England, and the center of information, AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, you can join the conversation very easily at 508-871-7000, and that will get you into the studio for two-way talk and conversation, and our text line up and running at 617-297-8388. And of course, you can always tune into Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitch TV, even at Joe Mangi, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show, or even on Rumble and watch in real time. And I want to shift a little bit more to some local stuff going on. And we'll keep an eye on this. President Trump has been briefed on the shooting and what's going on there, and I'm sure he'll have something to say later in the day. But this, just an update on this lawyer shortage due to this bar advocate strike is leading to just dozens of cases and dismissals across the Bay State. It's causing criminals to be released within 7 days of being arrested, and then cases dismissed without prejudice, meaning they can be recharged. But bar advocates, these are private attorneys who represent about 80% of indigent defendants in Massachusetts. I know Sean Burke and I talked about it on Handling Change a little bit. I've covered it on the show before. In Massachusetts, the lawyers are paid a little less than our New England neighbors, but the number of bar advocates is phenomenal. It's not very difficult to say you want a public defender. And I've been in the courtrooms when you see this go on, and it's a few questions. Can you afford a lawyer? No. Okay, we'll give you one. It's not like there's a process. Can we see your bank accounts? What's your W-2? How many? It's nothing like that. It's pretty much as easy as, do you think you can afford your own attorney? No, I don't have the money for that. All right, we'll give you one. So 80% of the people going to court in Massachusetts, you, the taxpayers, are paying for it. And you're paying, don't forget, CPCS, the Council for Public Service. That's what administers the pay to these lawyers. They also minister the bill to people like me, my company, that is CPS certified, meaning that as a detective agency and private investigators, we do defense work. And we get a NIC number associated with that case. And you don't send a bill to the lawyer. You don't send it to the client. You send it, go online, and I submit it to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So anyway, this has led to over 1,300 defendants, including more than 120 recently, having their charges dismissed because courts can't find lawyers to represent them. Now, obviously, they're going to make an effort to try to get lawyers that are willing to do this to the, to lawyers, right? They're not going to try to, or at least you hope, but it is Massachusetts, that the ones that they got to dismiss right away, they're going to be the lesser of the crimes. But under the LaValle Protocol, and that's from a 2004 Supreme Judicial Court ruling, defendants without counsel can't be held in custody for more than 7 days. 7 days, you're arrested, you're charged, you're booked, you go to county jail. If you don't have a lawyer in 7 days, they have to let you out. Right to a speedy trial, remember? And charges must be dismissed after 45 days without representation. So if you're sitting up at Worcester County House, Middlesex, whatever the case, Billerica, 45 days, a month and a half, and you don't have a lawyer working on your case, they have to dismiss the case. Doesn't mean they can't bring it back because you weren't found not guilty or you weren't charged. You were charged, but you hadn't had the trial. So double jeopardy isn't kicking in there. Now, bar advocates, these means the public appointed attorneys, when I use that term, are paid $65 per hour for district court cases. $85 for Superior Court. And if you happen to be a bar advocate or public defender on a murder case, I don't know if you want to be, if you want a public defender, if you're facing murder, Jack, but that's $120 an hour for a murder case. Now, that is for the hour worked. So if you're a legal firm and you might get $1,200 an hour, $800 an hour, you're probably not taking these cases, but sometimes you have to. But it's $120 for you, but it's also would be $120 for the paralegal. It would be for any of the work that's done. So, I mean, when you get down to it, because of the team working on that, hey, it could be $400 or $500 an hour. You're billing the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But after expenses like office rent, malpractice insurance, taxes, take-home pay can equal $43,000 a year. And this, of course, would drive many of these lawyers to leave for better paying jobs. I mean, to become a prosecutor would be absolutely a pay raise. And you got attorneys out there who are demanding to raise it to $100 per hour. Still less than regional average for New England, folks. Calling these recent legislative offers for $20 increase a slap in the face. I don't know. What say you? Are they underpaid? Maybe we give these bar advocates a raise in the billing amount, but we do a little more filtering on the front end of who qualifies for this. Because I can tell you, many years around courthouses, many years working for defense attorneys and having to sit through trials, and there are a lot of people with public defenders, and they have plenty of money to secure their own attorney. So they're going there, and some of them are just, what are you thinking? You really didn't think, because they show up in court with a public defender with a $2,000 watch on and 20 grand in jewelry, driving high-end car, and they're saying they're destitute, indigent, and we need a public defender. That's on them. But this strike has caused chaos in the courts, folks. Now, especially in Suffolk, Middlesex, and now Essex counties. And some courts, Dorchester and Roxbury, lacking attorneys for days on end, just nobody in sight. So now we have over 3,200 hearings have been delayed. Courts are scrambling to hire more judges to handle the Valley hearings. And Boston Municipal Court expecting 225 cases today alone to run into this problem. So prosecutors plan to rifle dismiss charges once lawyers are available. So they're going to refile those, but the victims are left without closure. Right, I thought I'd use a left word there. Closure. They don't have closure. So you're charged 7 days, they let you go. 45 in the county house, they let you go. Well, that doesn't mean your case is done. Doesn't mean you can't be rearrested. Doesn't mean you still can't be charged and tried for this. It just means we can't hold you in custody for the moment because we don't have legal representation. So public safety concerns are rising as these defendants, including some of these people are charged with violent crimes, and they're still being released because that's not a factor in the calculus of it, by the way. And this crisis isn't just Massachusetts' problem, right? Other states are dealing with this issue. Oregon and Maine, they face similar public defender shortages due to low pay and high caseloads. And Governor Maura Healey has called it a matter of public safety and due process, urging swift resolution, but funding remains a sticking point. Now, we've seen the state increase other salaries, including the governor's staff. We've seen the state legislature in recent years give themselves pay raises. I always think that both our state legislators and our federal representatives, Congress, both chambers, their pay should always be tied to something. I think Warren Buffett said something to the effect, and I'm totally paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact quote, but he said, if you really want a balanced budget, tie legislators' pay to that. Every time the budget exceeds a certain percentage, 2-3%, they stop getting paid, and you'll have a balanced budget in no time. I think it was tongue in cheek, but I get the point. And I think you do too. So the Committee for Public Counsel Service, CPCS, and advocates are pushing for temporary pay hikes. And then long-term legislative fixes to ensure defendants' constitutional rights to counsel are met. But I still go back to the front end of this. And that is, I think there are people that are getting public defenders, and once they're determined indigent and you're signed off to get the public defender, the bar advocate, then that lawyer can utilize other things, like someone like myself. They can contract a private investigator or a private investigation agency to work on your behalf. Again, then file a motion, they get a NIC number, bang, that's it. But you also have all the other experts that you might need in a defense case, all being paid through the PCPS, the Public Counsel Services, which is taxpayer money. So I think that the front end of this, folks, is let's give the pay raise. Let's get this up to reasonable average pay, but make it a little stricter. For you to have, the burden should be on you to establish that you cannot afford your defense before we hand that out. And we're running out of time for this segment, but I really think that we should look at tying our representatives' pay. And maybe a representative can only make what the median income is, either for the country or for the district they live in, because we're paying for a lot of other things. And as far as having to be in DC or whatever, why can't they stay in barracks like military people, right? I don't know. But the lawyer shortage is shaking up our justice systems, folks. That's the thing. So should bar advocates get a raise they're demanding, or is there another way to fix this? 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. We're going to take a third and final break here on the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Stick with us. We will be back in 2 minutes and 10 seconds, folks.
Looking for a fuel and food stop that truly stands out? Experience the Yatco difference. At Yatco, we're dedicated to bringing you the best customer service, the highest quality products, and a commitment to making your life on the go easier. Yatco has 15 convenient locations across central Massachusetts, and now our newest spot at 75 Quansigamut Ave in Worcester. Yatco, where every stop keeps you going. Are you ready for a change? Do you need a job that works around your schedule? How about driving your own kids to school and getting paid for it? AA Transportation is offering paid CDL training with regular permit classes that get you on the road. They have immediate openings for school bus and van drivers, as well as monitors across several districts. All you need is a good driving record with at least 5 years experience, a clean quarry, the ability to pass a pre-employment drug screening and DOT physical. If you already have a school bus or 7D certificate, join us now and earn up to $30 an hour with guaranteed minimum hours, health and dental benefits, plus a 401k. And for those experienced coach bus drivers out there, we have a position for you too. This is perfect for parents, retirees, or anyone who enjoys being behind the wheel. Call Lori at 774-361-5042. That's 774-361-5042. Start your journey with AA Transportation.
Every person is entitled to 30 fundamental human rights, and you only need to do one thing to enjoy all of them. Know them. Get your free human rights booklet today. Go to humanrights.com.
Looking to add your talent to a dynamic company? United States Traffic Network seeks a motivated account executive to join the sales team. Send your resume to ustrafficnetwork.com/career.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the fourth and final segment on the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central, from the center of the dial, the center of New England, and the center of information, reminding you can join the conversation for the remainder of the hour that we have together at 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000, and you can always watch the stream on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, including Rumble, the Joe Mangiacotti Show channel there, and the station's Facebook page as well. I do want to talk about this bill or the rent control. Okay, Massachusetts, Mass Fiscal has something out on this. A 2026 ballot question, folks, is pushing to bring back rent control in Massachusetts. Wow. And the Mass Fiscal Alliance, they're warning us. Now, you know Paul Craney, he's joined us here on the show before. He warns that a proposed ballot question for next year to reduce rent control, to reintroduce rent control, is a rehash of a policy voters rejected way back in 94 by 51 to 41% margin when this was brought up before, right, 30 years ago. And back then, rent control led to, as it usually does in Mandami, you should listen to this because rent control, it's in his bucket of wonderful socialist things, right? So government-run grocery stores and rent control and redistributing wealth from those nasty billionaires. But rent control led back then, and it would again, to higher housing costs. And of course, reduced availability, crumbling building quality. So it's going to hurt renters, landlords, and communities. Nobody wins in this rent control situation. If there's rent control as a landlord, and I've been a landlord as a former landlord, it's expensive, right? You've got a lot of headaches to keep that building up to code and very nice. And if you can't get market prices, it's going to do. So you're going to have buildings that are going to be crumbling and falling apart because there's just no money to maintain them. And then the inventory will drop, of course. So you've got additional housing crisis. So you've got reduced availability, crumbling buildings. The quality is going to go down. And landlords are going to leave. They're going to do what I've done. My property that I had in Worcester became too much of a headache. Spend more time chasing the rent down. So they just sell off. Probably going to be at a loss and get on to somewhere else. So it's the same flawed idea, this proposal, dressed up with new branding, predicting it's just going to tank the housing industry, folks. Even talk of rent control is already spiking rents. So in a lot of these buildings, there are, of course, privately, individually owned rental pieces of property. But there's a lot of these buildings are owned by groups of investors or what have you. We saw this, or I saw this a little while before I left, and God, it's coming up to like 5 years I've been out of Worcester. But we saw this with that loft and stuff downtown by the library and some other properties in Worcester. The Boston real estate investors came into Worcester and bought up some of these things and refurbished them. And if you remember, the rents that they initially asked were way out of market for Worcester at the time. They may have been from Boston and did these buildings very nice and did these lofts and stuff very nice, but they forgot that they weren't in Boston anymore and they couldn't get Boston rents in Worcester. So those rents did come down a little bit. But even the talk of this is already spiking the rents because landlords are going to raise prices preemptively to hedge against potential caps, right? it seems like a lot of these policies that we keep hearing, a lot of these politicians who happen to be on the left seem to really go after anybody who's working very hard in making them a success of something and causing them to maybe think about taking their money. Did you see Elizabeth Warren on, I forget, NBC, I think it was? I saw the clip of her, and the interviewer, I don't know who it is, 508-871-7000, if you know who I'm talking about, was trying to talk to about Mandami and this stuff, rent control and all this. And she's like, well, you worried that the billionaires, where they're going to get their next meal? And it's like, so not the point. And he said, well, no, they're going to leave. And she said, oh, they said that before and they haven't. Well, Senator Warren, may I correct you? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Massachusetts, New York, a lot of blue places saw massive exodus of people with money during COVID because they had the ability to go to their second home and not stay in the city where you couldn't do anything. Instead of being locked up in your apartment or condo in the city, they went to their Florida home or their island home or their ranch or whatever. And then a lot of businesses left. We saw this during COVID, then we saw it with just going after the taxes are being too much. Then we saw when they trumped up the charges, again, no pun intended, against Donald Trump. And these other billionaire, or at least 100 millionaires, who said, wait a minute, he hasn't done anything I haven't done. They're going to come after me. And Hochul actually had to go on TV to try to tell all the other billionaires out of New York, no, don't worry. We're never going to do that to you. This is just something we're doing to Trump. And now even the left, and you've got CNN and NBC and stuff coming out, and they're saying, and they're finally admitting it out loud, that those charges were all trumped up and they were all BS. And they were just to try to get that convicted felon label on Trump. So developers are already pushing new housing projects, right? And they're very wary of investing in the market if the government's going to put these price controls. So you've got these developments that are on the drawing board or in process now in jeopardy. And the chilling effect could worsen the housing shortage that Mass is already having. And of course, that's more or felt more in the high demand areas like Boston, where the supply is already very, very tight. And who gets hurt? Well, the renters. It's going to push working families and small landlords. That's the other thing, right? Small landlords, the guy who has a 3-family, or maybe a bigger thing out of it. So 508-871-7000. We've got a call. Is it Phil George? All right, we'll go to the phones. Hey, is this Phil?
Hi, Joe. How you doing?
Good. What's happening, Phil?
Yeah, I know a lot of people that actually that own either commercial and residential. So I hear this all the time. And I have one friend actually in Spencer that owns quite a bit of residential property. And what he does to get renters out, he actually will pay them $500 to leave, because he knows you know this, Joe. I mean, it's a nightmare.
I hate to admit the fact that I've helped somebody move on from one of my units just to get the unit freed up from them. Yeah, I've been held over the barrel and like that too. One of the reasons I gave up the property,
Yeah, it's just a nightmare. The other thing I heard, I don't know if you heard this, but I heard that they were trying to get a law passed, I don't know if it was in Worcester or in Massachusetts, that if your tenants were committing crimes or something like that with drugs, that they were going to somehow hold you accountable. Did you hear that one?
I did hear something about this a while ago, that somehow that if it was happening on your property, you were going to be pulled into this. And that's one of those things, Phil, wait a minute. If you're going to tell the landlord that they somehow are culpable or have responsibility for what's happening in the unit they've rented out, then you've got to give them the power and authority to police it. right? You can't put that responsibility on the landlord, but then say, but you can't do anything. You can't get rid of somebody, that easily. You got to go through the same process, which is a nightmare to evict somebody. Trust me, in Worcester, I've had to go through housing court, and you can't inspect. So yeah, it didn't get anywhere. I mean, do you think that would be a fair move?
Right. The other issue, I've known a lot of people with little mom and pop. They own it. They bought a couple of 3-deckers here and there, and you go to court, the landlord is automatically considered the greedy evil one. That you're going in there negative to begin with, and it's just a nightmare. So they make it. They're claiming that they want because I think they saw this on CNBC. But Massachusetts was the 49th worst state for us to do business in terms of financially. Did you see that?
No, but I'm not surprised.
Only Hawaii was worse, and I think we have either I think we got one of the highest rentals, in terms of the rents, and also the lowest occupancy. So it's a nightmare. But instead of them trying to make things easier, and again, I know a lot of people too with commercial real estate. I'll give you an example. I have a cousin who owns a lot of commercial real estate, actually all over the Northeast. And he says if he goes to a red state, they say, what can we do to help you to succeed? And he says, you go to either Worcester or Boston. It's like, what do you want?
Yeah. No, I've got, I could do a whole show on the nightmare stories of landlords and how they did treat you. And like I said, I had personal experience where I had a tenant who gave me a forgery cashier's check. And of course, when it bounced back and so forth, and the judge in the housing court just ignored this fact. I had to actually leave the court, go down to what is now Berkshire's bank, and get them to, on their letterhead, write back that it was just a nightmare. But Phil, we're against the clock. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. Yeah, maybe we should do a whole show on landlords and renting in Worcester County. And I'm sure I'm not the only one with some horrific stories dealing with the housing court. But this is going to wrap up the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN, folks. Frankie Boy is coming up next. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock. Same bad time, same bad channel. Joe out.
This is Radio Central, 830 W.